hello. Today, just walking a different part of DC today, but gonna check out a cemetery up by the Brooklyn, Rhode Island, Rhode Island station. So, have not been out this way, but I don't know. Looks kind of decent. But it's been a while. But we'll see. Just meander around. Of course, later today or some UEFA qualifying stuff for you got the Nations League, wrap it up, and you've got, of course, World Cup qualify. Or actually, I think it's just Nations League today for teams to figure out which way they're gonna go. So, I mean, like, the camera tilt's a bit weird. It's not sure I'm doing it right. But I think so. Yeah, because I'm not. There we go. Yeah, so the last time I did this was back in. Was it February or January for the inauguration thing? It's been a while. But yeah, it's just to go back to a cemetery. Because why not? It's the international break. So there's no footy to keep you occupied. It's not over. It's 32. It's not overly chilly, but we're back on the World Cup qualifying. It is a bit abusing that you have to fit both legs into 5 days or 6 days. Makes it a bit tough, but there's some good games. You think that Greece can pull it back against Scotland? Only one down. Of course, no away goals. All of that goodness. But not sure where am I. I guess I was just following. But yeah, you've got that game later. That'll be good. Of course, the other big news was Club Leon getting booted from the Club World Cup. Because of, I think, Pachuca taking priority, which is a shame for Rodriguez. But what are you gonna do? So it'll probably be a Costa Rican team that takes her spot. So it'll be a very small, mundane Costa Rican team. Which, if you got like Wydad Casablanca or Mamelodi Sundowns, it's not a radical juxtaposition. But I think the group they would be in, it would be a competitive group. Because I think, of course, if you got one of the, it's not like the UEFA club is Salzburg. Like it's a real club, or certainly a not a real club, but to be patronizing, but certainly a big one that they'd be going up against. So it's certainly a mismatch for a club like that, but what can you do? Navigation would be easier if I took forget the street, if I took the main street, but probably a bit louder. It isn't the fun of walking around, just walking around. There's a nice blog post. If I was smarter or more considerate, I would post it, or I would link to it. But it's like the article is like 50 tips for traveling, and all the points made sense. And the one point was he just highlighted. That's what I read a couple days ago. So if I still remember the points, they're probably decent. But the big points, the overarching concept was you can either travel for rest and relaxation, R&R, or you could travel for actual purposes, like for the actual experience, which are two very different things, right? And it makes sense, right? Like if you're gonna travel for relaxation, like if you're going to Cancun, it's like typical, like you go to Cancun, but you're not actually doing anything that engaging. Like if you go to Cancun, odds are these chunk of people don't even go see any of the Mayan ruins in the area, right? So you've got that idea and rest relaxation, or you have the other side of like experience. And he didn't emphasize much, like the classic, like go do like a pottery class or something along those lines. And his point was much more is go to random spots and do things and just interact with people. Because that's ultimately the different type of experience. Which again makes complete sense. Just gotta take some photos because on Google Maps there's a heat map of all the places that you've been. So it's always nice to fill up the heat map. So that was the guy's concept, which made a lot of sense. It's at least just like the classic "is water what like what is water?" the David Foster Wallace bit along those lines. And so the big points, and from that stood out were, well, start with the ones that were most eye-catching, that I remember the most. And the one point he made was, when you get to a place, when you get to a city or a country, you should immediately leave to go to the farthest place you will be, and then effectively work your way back to where you're going to depart from. Which I certainly feel is not the mental model I would have going into it. Alright. Because you want to maximize your time and get the most shots on goal of the finite time you have. But his point was, like, you're a new fish anyway. You're probably, and again, this might be his tech bias. The guy is like a tech writer, or tech. That's been fair, but I know tech adjacent people cite him. But his point was, you go into countryside, you don't know what you're doing. You go into the countryside, Like, it'll make you appreciate different things. I'm not sure if he said lower stakes experience, but implicitly there is that argument that it's lower stakes being in the countryside. And I pretty much just work my way back. And this is the point that did kind of resonate. Was by the time you do get back, I was going to walk up to this cathedral, monastery. And this point was by the time you do get back to the city of your departure, you will look at it with much more appreciation because you will appreciate the contrast. And I suppose this is coming from, I guess, not so much a city bias as is an American bias. It's like coming from suburbia, or even suburbia is relatively bustling if you think about like your strip malls and stuff. So his point about this phone of a phone. So his point about making it back, like, it does make sense in that regard. Yeah, and I think that's interesting. Of course, in some places it probably doesn't work out, but I think that's certainly one of the benefits of reading random stuff is you just appreciate different things. So that point stood out. The other ones that stood out, yeah, the instantly leave the city. He made a point that like 10 days is your optimal duration because after 10 days you start to get jaded and worn down. Which again, is fair. Won't argue against that. Other points. Ask a taxi driver to take you to his mom's place. Because they'd be happy to, right? They're getting paid to do something they probably don't get to do overly frequently. I'm sure more will come to mind. But I think you can just I'm not sure if it's I assume it's open. Yeah, because there's the main street. I assume it's fine. Yeah, I think it's fine. It is a cool site. Completely lost my train of thought. I don't remember as much as the guy's writing as I thought I did. This doesn't look super pedestrian friendly. Although I guess if nobody yeah, I didn't think it'd just be like a drive thing. But I'm sure more will come to me about the guy's writing. But he makes good points. I think probably the most, like, the one thing he made is like, he was a bit laissez-faire about food safety, which I've heard enough bad stories to probably be a bit more concerned about it. Right, so you don't want to derail your trip prematurely as a result. Yeah, so there's some light research before this. And at Google Maps, sometimes there's like 3 cemeteries that are part of this complex. And in Google Maps, like 2 stood out as being special, or having the special highlights. And one was of the first firefighter to die in DC, which happens to, like, I know like DC, it wasn't around since the start, but the guy died in 1850, which I suppose actually is a pretty good safety record, because DC got burned in 1812. Or around the 1812. So 30 years of no fatalities in a line of firefighting. It's pretty good. So there's that guy. And the other guy was pretty mundane. Like, this isn't like Les Invalides, apologies for pronunciation, in Paris, with all the various French generals of renown. Yes. Yeah, it's always until dawn. Yeah, some of these do look pretty cool, pretty nifty. It's always a bit jarring to like think about like how old some of these are, but yeah, I think. But the guy, this is the other big point. It's something I've come along to. I started to try to experience, as maybe you can tell currently, is the big thing when you're traveling for experience. The biggest thing is to just not be overly prescriptive about what you want to get done. And it's really about not having a really hard itinerary. And it's just about, yeah, this can't be a road, because it's way too skinny for any pedestrians. If you're a pedestrian, aren't you supposed to get out and walk? Yeah, very confusing. The website was not super obvious. I assume it's open to public. It's 8 o'clock, so I know it's open. And the gate was open. But the guy's big point is you need to be very non-regimented about what you want to get done, and just go with the flow. He made specific points about, like, if you see people going in a big direction, like, you should go in it, right? Like, if people are going to a wedding, show up, because you're like, they're random. It'd probably be a kind of cool experience for the folks involved, which makes sense. I think that's the biggest thing. It's generally just go with the flow, and I suppose, and it works out conveniently, because that means it's less work, which is nice. I think it's also true, where I think that, like, the day-to-day is probably pretty packed with your job that takes X hours, and commuting and having whatever family commitments and all that stuff. Just going with the flow is honestly, like, it makes incredible sense. And the biggest thing, it's not what he said, or so I don't think I recall him saying it, was it's kind of like a learned muscle, and you can't force it. You just have to do it. So I suppose I'm kind of doing that. I certainly don't have any shame, although it is yeah. So during the inauguration, I was blabbering. I guess the start of this, I was kind of quiet. Oh, there's like a family. I'm not sure how much on the camera you guys can see, because the camera's on 1080 30 frames. This feels like if there was a car, this could be a slightly bad spot. Oh, nice pavilion over there. Almost slipped. You know, one thing is, like, you watch like a court's cast or a Bald and Bankrupts, and like those guys are blabbering with no regard, and honestly they're probably a bit overly blabbering to the point to which it's a bit disrespectful to the people around them. Okay, it's just like some more recent stuff. That kid. It was, personally, I do find that's a long life. What, 29 to 20, 87. That's kind of wild. Only, yeah, like World War II was less than 100 years ago. Of course, it's the obligatory, depending on how you lean. The Civil War, or civil rights, only X years ago. If that's your mojo. Or the Civil Rights Act. So it was a bit jarring. I do suppose that the Korean War is always a bit more of an interesting thing for personal reasons. But yeah, so that's that. Yeah, plus this granite pavilion. Yes, so the commentary is not great, I'll admit it. Got off to a bad start. Just a bit camera shy speaking when there's people around. Because it is probably a bit jarring, although conceptually you would think that vlogging is kind of a known thing. Or a known quantity. Although I suppose there is some probably regional dispersion. Here's a nice thing. All that space. That's a bit jarring. I'm not sure how they pick who gets what. Maybe donor. Probably says it, and I skipped it. No, it doesn't really specify. But yeah, I suppose you can see like the variety of names changes over time. Freedom Garden of Scattered Memories. I suppose you can't really see that. Yeah. Very much not good with this DJI, but if a credit card is giving you spend 1,000 and get 200 back, conceptually that's a 20% back. And as someone, oh, there's a football field up there. You know, and that feels like something you're obligated to pick up, right? If Wells Fargo is willing to, build out its credit card business, then you have to take them up on it. So, yeah, mainly with that, haven't really messed around with actually be professional with this. Like the zoom function is kind of like I can flip the camera as I blast you with the sun. That's kind of about it. The limits of my abilities. But yeah, very quiet. I knew a guy who had who always did the bit of you shouldn't. What is that? Like the Muslim Crescent Nation of Islam thing. I had a friend who, like, you gotta hold your breath when you drive past a cemetery, which is honestly, if you think about it, just the perfect sign of American car culture that's a thing. Because it, like, there's a nice Greek surname. Another Greek, Formont, feels vaguely ethnic. I'm not sure what the logic of the ordering is. But there's a nice bird. But it is just like pure car brain, kind of. Which is a bit uncharitable. But conceptually, like, that is car brain. Oh, that's nice. Peach blossoms. Oh, and more peach blossoms. Of course, the sun makes it not the best shot. Yes, but this actually would be a decent spot to come. I suppose you can't really take glamour pictures because that'd be a bit. You can't take like glamour pictures of the peach blossoms because that'd be a bit probably uncouth given the context. But yeah, this is. I can imagine that this is actually a very nice looking place. Like, again, like, it is a nice looking place. I'm not sure if I'm gonna make it down there. Yes, I am. It's 8:16. I'm kind of hungry, but I'm not gonna stick around for McDonald's, and my battery's getting kind of ish low. I don't have the extended battery. So like, I'm just gonna hop a metro at 7 o'clock when it opens. Be on and just swing down. I generally don't come out to this part of the red line. Right. So why not just stick my head out in this neck of the woods on a Sunday where there is not any immediate footy to watch. Yeah, this is actually a really nice place. A very nice spot. Again, I'm 99% sure I'm okay to being here. Yeah, and generally speaking, especially like generic graveyards, they aren't paid. I forget the name of I was going on a bit of a Napoleonic nerd fest the past couple of weeks, and so I used ChatGPT deep research for a new inquiry. about to make me a list of Napoleonic like statues, memorials, like literally anywhere, like as broad a range as you can get me, from of course like the ones in Paris to Egypt and Russia, because again, like, it is pretty incredible how you got these mausoleums. It's how big, it's how far Napoleon was, right? From Toulon to northern Italy with Milan and Venice, into Austria, into Bavaria, and what is now Germany. In between, he popped into Egypt because of shenanigans with the Directory, which honestly is a pretty cool name. Like, I definitely see how it was a somewhat incompetent setup, having a ruling committee of 5 guys, and it is a committee. So the joke is, of course, committees can only be so effective, and there's a lot of good jokes about committees. I'm sure management consultant types would have for you. Yeah, so apparently, yeah, it was a bit. Gosh, of course, the Wikipedia article or the Epic History TV YouTube shorts are better, but effectively, Napoleon had his big start kicking the British and French reactionaries, or traitors, one could argue, out of Toulon, outside of Marseille. And so that was his big break, which got him attention of the Directory. But then in the Vendée, in Brittany, there was a reactionary uprising, which I did not fully read the Wikipedia. I did not find any YouTube videos talk about the Vendée situation as much, but apparently it was a big thing. It lasted like 3 years, and apparently, from the first paragraph I read, the issue was that whereas most French aristocrats by that point lived in the city, in the Vendée, Brittany region, the French aristocrats were still very rural, and therefore had affected fiefdoms, which allowed them to just concentrate more power. And so the Vendée, it was actually like a list of 200,000 people died in the Vendée campaign. And so apparently, and of course, if you look up, the general who put down the Vendée revolt was a General Hoche, Hoche. And so you can find statues of him. There's a peninsula on the southern edge of Brittany, and you can find statues of the guy. Apparently, it's a bit funny when you look up statues of the various French marshals, because you can see the different number of Google reviews, and you see Marshal Ney on the intersection in Paris. It's okay, 50, that's not bad. But this guy, General Hoche, only has 3, and 2 of them, and all of them are French language. 2 of them accuse him of or reference him in context of a quote-unquote genocide. And so yeah, I suppose, again, I'm not fully aware of the full characters of the Vendée campaign. I certainly expect that, given the touted casualty figures and the fact that it lasted 3 years, it was a bloody campaign. And if you have to root out some deeply held reactionary stuff, I can certainly see that. Again, I do think people, nice random hole. I do think people don't fully appreciate just how decentralized then France was, It's just certainly people just underestimate how much work goes into nation building, right? Like the nation state is a contemporary concept, and like you actually have to develop it. I feel like in the U.S. it's very, very strange. It's again back to like the good old water concept. Treat it as face value, but the idea of building a German state, a French state, a Russian state, an Italian state. Like the Italian state, honestly, a lot of it probably credit goes to Napoleon, right? For at some point, effectively doing some stuff to deal with Sardinia, Piedmont, and the Kingdom of Naples, and the Papal States. So a lot of credit, probably does need to go to the guy. But yeah, so and to put a wrap on General Hoche, who put down this revolt, he ended up winning that and got deployed to the Army of the Rhine, where he died of tuberculosis. So there's a statue. So he has statues in that part of Brittany where he's from, and he's also got in that German town, like kind of in the Strasbourg area. Of course, Strasbourg's in France, but across the river to Germany. He's got stuff in that part. A statue there. So Napoleon, he did not want to get deployed to fight reactionaries, which again, maybe some on-the-nose foreshadowing for what he would do later in 18 Brumaire. But yeah, so anyways, so therefore Napoleon wanted to long, was kind of promoted effectively, but he didn't want to go fight reactionaries, and he wasn't senior enough probably, or he came up too soon to be involved in fighting in the Netherlands or in the Pyrenees or on the Rhine against all the reactionaries of the other monarchs. And again, I don't think people realize just how revolutionary the French Revolution was for what it meant to question and literally overthrow an absolute monarchy. Not to mention probably the Bourbons. Probably has various familial relations because with various entities. Or something imagine like, let's say like the Habsburgs with all of their relations, because they're like coordinate. So like literally like I think you have the British being the pesky Anglos. And so again, it's kind of hilarious how instantly France got jumped. And so anyway, as it turns out, there was a reactionary mob that stormed the chambers. And so Napoleon, being the only guy being the guy in the area in Paris, was called in. And so with some grape shot cannons, he dispersed the crowd. And that's what got him his big break, to then get deployed to Italy, to lead the army of Italy, which was pretty tough shape, because there he had to face the Austrians, and he had to face would it be Sardinia, Piedmont, or was it, or Savoy, or something? But there's a set like pretty much two, and pretty much he that'd be a wicked place for a homeless person to be. I'm kind of scared to poke. that would be a wicked place for a homeless person to be. Man, yeah. No, that would be truly wicked. But it's cool. Like, you could see in there, like you had all the different structures, right, for future lunches. So I guess what? Yeah, you can see 1938. Not the greatest, best maintenance. Let me see. There's like a bird's nest, but you can make out like 1938. I suppose the bottom one, two, bottom six never got used. Yeah, what was a shame. I noticed that one TikTok account. Bro, I must come off as like such an ADHD kid for bouncing around. I noticed that one TikTok account where that lady goes around cleaning graves, and apparently people were saying that she uses the wrong chemicals, so she's actually like destroying the grave. But wow, died 1914, lived 80 years. It's got to be pretty impressive if you look at the actuarial chart. Yeah, I suppose 1912, 1914, 80 years. So she would have been born after all of the Napoleonic stuff ended. Pickford, not Jordan Pickford. It's a shame. Not sure how you take pictures. I think you're supposed to be able to take pictures. I don't know how to do it. And I'm not sure if like it's location sense, because that's the big thing. I want my things. I deeply regret not. I used to be a bit of like that privacy Reddit schmuck, so I didn't have geolocation on all the time. So some of my photos are not geotagged, and so it's really annoying because I can't. Like I don't know where some of the cool spots I were. Like there's a very pleasant vineyard area near Freiburg. I just have no idea where it is. I suspect I can deduce it because it's in a very residential part of the city, but I just can't find it. Or I don't know exactly where it is, which is a shame. But back to Napoleon. So yeah, Italy again. Like I'm not gonna repeat the history, but it was a really impressive series of battles that he did to turn around about Italy. Not sure how I came to this topic, because I know I was talking about Hoche, Edgar Allan, but not Edgar Allan Poe. In Philadelphia, there's a nice Edgar Allan Poe house. I get to this. But yeah, so I suppose the point is there is no one overly... that is actually pretty derogatory. But this is not Les Invalides or the Mausoleum. I forget... In France, there's that cemetery in Paris, where like literally every French person ever known is buried. Like La Rue Cemetary or something. And you have like something that starts to. It's too cold for me to check my phone, but then you have like this like La something starts with an A, like the It's not the Arsenal, but it's something. Where it's like it's a bunch of military guys. So that's that. Whereas here, I do think the first. I have no idea where that guy is. The first firefighter. Maybe it's this one actually, right here actually. Might be. That sign on the edge seems vaguely firefighter-ish. And there's a thing by it. Columbia Fire Company. I think it is. Columbia Fire Company. No, I think that part is just an advertisement. It's a shame. Look at that. That's a pretty cool looking thing. I do like how an obelisk is actually a pretty universal thing. Right, from Egypt to the DC to you see it around the world. It's pretty nice, pretty cool. Huh. I don't know if this is the guy. Oh, this is the guy. This is the guy. Yeah, so this is the first firefighter. Right. This monument was erected by Columbia, especially of a gallant citizen, a truer, nobler, trust your heart, more loving and loyal, never beat. I'd say Marshall Ney maybe have been loyal AF, but yeah. So this is it. So this is one of the two things I think in the Glenwood Cemetery. This is the one thing that Google Maps actually highlights as a thing. Actually highlights as a thing is this one. There we go. I can't say on Google Maps I'm gonna save this as one of my spots I've been to. That's pretty cool. And there we go. There we go. I guess we blissfully walked past it, none the wiser, but we eventually found it. Completely blissfully unaware. Glass is crooked. Is the camera crooked? Hard to tell. Hard to tell. Very, very self-aware when you're on camera, after all. But there we go. Living serendipitously. Walking around the graveyard. Again, like with the peach blossoms over there, I think this is actually a pretty nice spot. Part of me is tempted to come by this way. Of course, the issue is I do like watching soccer too much, or football on the weekend too much. And it does stop me from living a bit. But next weekend is the full blossom. Saturday's a really nice day. So I'm gonna pop out on the 7 o'clock, come over yonder. So I suppose I should make a full day of it. Probably. And just pop out over this way and just have McDonald's. Yeah, because there's no way this part's gonna be yeah, there's a car over there, but I don't think I saw anybody else. So we'll think about it. I don't think there's any good soccer games next Saturday. I say like there's not any like the big name matchups or no derbies that would instantly grab your attention. But on Sunday there's a good litany of games. I think like Serie A in Italy, you have like back-to-back weekends of big games with implications for European qualifying in the championship and the Scudetto of Bologna and Lazio. Then you have, I think next weekend you have the Derby del Capitale or something between Lazio and Roma. I think we've got there's a good old derby, the Milan derby coming up. I think the actual Italian phrasing of it, it's not like the Milan derby, it's because of a cathedral in Milan. So it's a different name. I don't know, it's good stuff. But back to Napoleon and that stuff. And so I haven't looked at the list yet. I think I messed up the prompts. I need to go back and ask it to give me like something I can put into Google Maps to find the stuff. Because surprisingly, it's very hard. It's been hard to find a list. It has been hard to find a list of, Because you think of all like the slop SEO websites, it'd be very easy to find a list of Napoleonic stuff, of Napoleonic monuments, but that is not the case. Surprisingly difficult, and I could not find a centralized list of it. So I had to use ChatGPT deep research, which I paid for, of course, to help me in my endeavor. I think it's promising. I pulled it from quote unquote 40 different sources. I get like if you look up Napoleonic, like a list of Napoleonic memorials or statues, I do not find good results. Oh, the battery's about to die. We're at 30%. I think that's the plan. So I might, I probably should come out here next weekend. Because it'll be a nice day. It'll be a beautiful 70. So I can wear a soccer jersey in my vanity. Pop down to Smithsonian to check out, because I've never seen it in person. I might as well. I'm not gonna stick around because it's always a bit. Rather just check that when I never time. Yeah, then pop out back this way. And there's a McDonald's in the area, so maybe I can stick around and make it a bigger exploration for McDonald's, or I can then just vacate and vomit us back down later. Oh, that was this place. That was a pretty pleasant and quaint walk around. That was the bathroom open. This is a good question. Wait. Oh, a mausoleum. I don't think you can see inside at all. But it's a big mausoleum. I suppose this is the modern version of a mausoleum compared to the ones we saw over that way. Surprising amount of people going to church on the subway this morning. Yes, that was a pretty cool, quaint thing. There you can see Glenwood Cemetery. It's a pretty nifty, a nifty thing. Glenwood Cemetery. So I think there's another cemetery over there. It's probably open. Yeah, it is. Why not Parlam? Big hole in the street. Okay, back on. So we'll see what the list says. Catholic cemetery. I suppose the French Revolution wasn't overly Catholic friendly. Oh, this looks pretty quaint. And there's actually a pedestrian path. Very nice. But yeah, back on the Napoleon thing. So we'll see. I think out of all the historical sub-niches that people can get worked up about, okay, I will say I do like how the Catholic cemetery instantly has more Catholic sounding names. Ferrero, Crovo, Fugazi, Marinelli, Massino, Oriani, Bazzuro, Bichère. Incredible. Okay, so anyways, on the Napoleon thing, I think of all these historical niches that people do, it's probably like weeaboos are probably the most annoying archetype. Probably. I think like out of the historical debates that are kind of annoying and pedantic, I think probably like weeaboos and how they could have won a war is probably like the most annoying archetype that you can have. But I think the best archetype you can have historical debates, or still one of the more amusing ones, and again, it's probably is just like general like what is lighthearted and what's not, is like asking to rank Napoleon's marshals, his 24 marshals. Or ask like who were Napoleon's best marshals. And it kind of becomes a proxy for the degree to which there's that question of like if you had to stack rank money, fame, or power, and like depending on your on the profession, you kind of want a certain answer. I really like the Napoleon thing is like a much more imprecise way of that, because you have something. And again, I'm just quoting off what I've read or listened to. I'm sure I get some personal bias and whatnot. But among his marshals, his 24, like the big ones that come to mind are Lannes, Massena, Bernadotte, Marshal Ney, Murat, the Polish guy, who else? Victor, Brune, Sucher, Davout, Bernadotte. I already said Bernadotte. But all of them. So I think personally, I think if a person abandoned Napoleon, I hold that against them. Personally. So someone like Bernadotte, instantly downgraded. Although I do suppose the irony of Bernadotte, Jean Bernadotte, is that his descendants are actually still the kings of the royal family of Sweden. Because apparently the Swedes, of course, Sweden was in the various coalitions against France. And so apparently they had an issue of succession and it needed somebody. And so the thinking was, Bernadotte's one of Napoleon's marshals, which could help with presumably relations with, the then dominant force, which was Napoleonic France, because I suppose you can't call it revolutionary France at that point. Walking into the sun's not great. And also apparently in a battle in Pomerania, he treated the Swedish prisoners well. So let's see if his bathroom is open. Maybe. Would one be so lucky? One will not be so lucky. I guess there's McDonald's I could check out. Maybe it's sold it. Anyways, this way. So he left Napoleon to become the new king of Sweden. Of course, he told Napoleon that he was going to be loyal to Sweden. But man, I don't know. It leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. And then he beat Marshal Ney in a couple of battles in the German campaign, which culminated in the French defeat at Leipzig. So Bernadotte leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I think my favorite is probably, yes, so my favorites probably tend to be the marshals who were loyal to Napoleon, and then secondarily, I think good at their jobs. And of course, the gripe the gripe many people have with with Napoleon's marshals is that many of them struggled to operate independently. So I think like Marshal Ney is probably one of my favorites. I'll get to him in a second. But some of his feats, especially at the Battle of with the Russia retreat, I think are just incredibly impressive. Some of the anecdotes. So I think the marshals operate independently. Maybe Massena, I think towards the end certainly showed a lack of vigor and age, getting beaten in Portugal. So Suchet, Marshal Soult, I think Soult. Marshal Soult's probably up there, loyal to Napoleon. Was probably the best marshal out of everybody who got there's some solar panels. Out of everybody who got deployed to fight in Spain independently, I think he did a good job. He did a good job in Spain, in the Catalonia, Zaragoza, Aragon area. Yeah. Yeah. So I think out of the marshals that come to mind that betrayed Napoleon, betrayed, I guess, a bit harsh, but Bernadotte, MacDonald. I think MacDonald, he ended up joining the Royalists when the Bourbon Restoration. And then the second Bourbon Restoration, when Napoleon came back for his 100 Days campaign. So also the 5 marshals who voted to condemn and execute Marshal Ney instantly in the can, in the ship book for that. Indescribable. Marshal Ney's fought 100 battles for France, not one against her, was a great line. And again, I just think, like back to I just find it baffling when you hear people, especially nowadays, be like unironic royalists. Like, what's that Silicon Valley guy, like the Curtis Yarvin? I suppose he's not as bad as he's not advocating for a hereditary thing explicitly, but still a bit vague, And if your point is like meritocracy and like absolute power in the hands of the most capable, like, you don't need to wrap it in terms of monarchy. There's some cool mausoleums, but so I'll use that as my segue for Marshal Ney. While I'm on the talk of the Bourbon, so Marshal Ney, skipping. Oh, I was gonna skip. Make sure you don't forget some good points, but we'll wing it. So Marshal Ney, so he started out at the start of like the first coalition and all the, before Napoleon came on the scene, he was fighting in the Netherlands, in Belgium, and what became the Batavian Republic. And then he got transferred to Napoleon, and it was good. Again, I think I don't remember all the stories, but apparently he was like a legitimate badass in terms of what he did. Like leading charges and stuff. But the biggest thing that made Marshal Ney stand out is just his function in the retreat from Russia, which I think is actually incredible. Apparently, the nice thing about the more modern stuff is that, like, we've actually got memoirs. I was reading this article, is saying how there's an information decay of like X%. I didn't read it fully, but presumably it's because you can't save every writing, and then even digital media deteriorates. So the nice thing about like the Napoleonic age is that we do have, and so there's this like an aide de camp or a field officer who was in the retreat from Russia, who was involved in stuff, including the stuff in Russia. And some of the stories are Marshall Ney. Like, of course, like the big things highlight. Okay, I do think I'm gonna stop by McDonald's. I do need to piss. I'm not sure if they sell milkshakes this early. Maybe I want a milkshake. Maybe. Yeah, so this is St. Mary's Cemetery, a Catholic cemetery. St. Mary's Catholic Cemetery. Pretty nice. I suppose I'll finish the sloop. I really want to. I'm not sure if there's another cemetery. I guess there's one there. So there's this cemetery. There's Glenwood Cemetery. And there's a cemetery down this way. But I don't really see the entrance to it. So I'm not going to mess around with it. But Marshall Ney. So with that, yeah, I forget like the officer's memoir, but like there's this one story. Again, I didn't really follow it, but I would like to at some point. But I say that about a lot of things books that I like to read. But apparently at some point, like in the retreat, of course, which was chaotic. And this is setting aside like how he was the rear guard and some of the incredible things he had to do, and how engaged he was in leading his troops in the rear guard. But apparently, right, because in an army camp, right, it's not just soldiers. You have like camp aides, like women, and then you have like some civilians. Because apparently in the retreat, like a woman abandoned her kid, like left the kid on the ground, and Marshall Ney like picked up the kid and like returned the kid to the woman, and then the woman abandoned the kid again, and then Marshall Ney gave the kid to another woman. And like, I don't know, this. I think in general it's cool that like such a small anecdote can persist to the modern day. But I think that data point is extremely humanizing and it's impressive for, again, I think it's a really badass military man. Like some of the charges he led as just a decisive cavalry and infantry commander. And ultimately, probably a bit overly aggressive. You can blame him for charging prematurely at Waterloo, or just maybe being the reason for Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo. But so again, right? So I think Davout was the rear guard and got smashed by Kutuzov, and so then Marshall Ney had to be moved to the rear guard. I think there was a sense that I don't know if it was a primary source or just like it's an observation, but it's like somebody had to be chosen to be sacrificed in the rear, and Marshall Ney happened to do it. And so Marshall Ney was in the rear guard. At some point, apparently, he got cut. His rear guard got cut off because I think there's like a 2-day delay between the main column and his. So like completely cut off, and this is in winter, right? Because the retreat started in October. The retreat from Moscow got completely cut off, and so pretty much what he had to do. So his formation of like 3,000 troops were cut off completely, and so what he did, instead of surrendering, he basically